With a second chance at life, standing at my engagement party, I saw Tiffany storming in to steal the groom. Smiling, I pushed the man beside me towards her. In my previous life, I held Ethan back for the sake of both families' reputation, and Tiffany committed suicide that very night. Ethan hated me to his core. 3 years into our marriage, he took over my family's company and sold me to a lawless border region for organ harvesting. Given a second chance, all I wanted was to be my own CEO. Yet, Ethan, with bloodshot eyes, knelt at my feet, begging me to just look at him once more. Bang! The pop of a champagne cork echoed through the venue, blinding lights shone down on me, and countless joyful voices buzzed in my ears. Congratulations to Miss and young Ethan on their engagement. What a perfect match, a truly heaven-sent couple. The agony of having my organs harvested had not fully subsided. I stood there, numb, my memories still lingering on the moment before my death in the previous life. I was the vicious socialite rival in a CEO romance novel, Grace, the only daughter of the prominent Vance family in Sterling. On this very day in my previous life, Ethan's Tiffany had come to steal him away. I held Ethan back for the sake of both families' reputations. As a result, Tiffany committed suicide that very night. Ethan hated me to his core. 3 years into our marriage, Ethan took over my family's company and sold me to a lawless border region. I suffered endless torment and ultimately died from organ harvesting. After my death, humiliating live-streamed videos of me circulated on the dark web, sold at a high price, becoming an indelible stain on my memory. I never thought I would ever get a second chance at life. While I was still lost in thought, Ethan had already smiled and placed the engagement ring on my finger. Kiss her. Kiss her. The chants from the crowd below rose and fell, one after another. I turned to meet Ethan's loving gaze, feeling nothing but profound disgust. Seeing my parents looking relieved nearby, I fought back the urge to slap Ethan hard. Everyone here today was from the upper echelons of Sterling society, and many had intricate ties to the Vance family. If I caused a scene in this setting, only the Vance family would be shamed. Guests unaware of the true story would side with Ethan, allowing him to gain every advantage. After all, Ethan was someone who was always adept at reading the room and seizing opportunities. I was waiting for a moment that was sure to come. Soon, amidst the overwhelming chants of kiss her, a girl in a white dress, with long hair reaching her waist and captivating, tear-filled eyes, cried as she pushed through the crowd. Ethan! Her voice clearly pierced through the clamor of the venue, striking directly into Ethan's and my ears. Ethan immediately spotted Tiffany, tears streaming down her face, looking at him from the crowd. He froze, the smile on his face solidifying. In my previous life, I had held Ethan back, preventing him from leaving. Ethan, both families' elders are here. For your future, you cannot disappoint grandfather. Then, I quietly had Tiffany taken away, preventing her from ruining the strategic marriage alliance. This time, however, I calmly held my champagne glass, smiling faintly, unmoving. Sure enough, without my interference this time, Tiffany, with tears in her eyes, slowly walked towards Ethan. Ethan frowned, instinctively looking at me with a strange expression. It was as if he was expecting me to do something, but when he realized I wasn't going to, he suddenly grew anxious. Grace, aren't you angry? So, Ethan had always known that Tiffany's actions would harm him. That's why he had calmly watched me step forward as his shield, only to then hypocritically come forward and criticize me. It allowed him to protect his relationship with his idealized first love and simultaneously gaslight me. But now that I wasn't playing along, what could he do? Smiled gently, then questioned Ethan with a hint of surprise. Didn't you tell me that you and Tiffany were just friends? Why would I be angry? I stared into his eyes, confirming again. Or are you saying you've been lying to me all this time? Under my gaze, Ethan faltered for a moment. I was the eldest daughter of the Vance family, while he was merely an illegitimate child. At this moment, he was still relying on the Vance family's assistance. How dared he offend me? Tiffany and I are just friends, please don't misunderstand. The one I truly love is Ethan. Before could finish his sentence, Tiffany's slender figure suddenly threw itself into his arms. Are you really going to abandon me? Why did you get engaged to another woman behind my back? As she spoke, Tiffany turned her head and glared at me with both caution and hatred. This woman must have forced you into it, didn't she? Tiffany was pressing so close to Ethan that her voice, clearly amplified through the headset microphone on his person, was broadcast throughout the venue. The atmosphere abruptly froze, and all the guests looked up at the stage, some in surprise, others with schadenfreude. Immediately, whispers broke out. What's wrong with young Ethan? He can't even control his mistress from making a scene here? How disgraceful. An illegitimate child is still an illegitimate child. No manners. Who knows what spell Miss is under to fall for such a worthless individual? I subtly tisket inwardly. Honestly, Tiffany was an absolute idiot who couldn't read the room. Did she even know what the consequences of her actions would be? Grandfather's displeased voice rang out. Ethan, who is this woman? All the pressure fell on Ethan. He immediately pushed Tiffany away with force. I don't know her. Almost simultaneously, Tiffany stumbled back 2 steps, her ill-fitting high heels twisted, and she fell directly off the stage. Ah! The stage was over a meter high. Tiffany's landing wasn't good, and she fell, hitting her head and drawing blood. She lay tragically on the ground, one hand pressing against her stomach, pitiful and helpless, reaching out towards Ethan on the stage. Ethan, how can you not recognize me? My stomach hurts so much, the baby. My baby. Ethan. Ethan, already filled with guilt over pushing her, grew even more agitated when he suddenly heard Tiffany say she was carrying his child. He leaped off the stage and scooped her up into his arms. Tiffany, don't be afraid, our baby will be fine. Trust me, I would never. The next moment, he simply abandoned a room full of guests and ran off. The engagement party ended in such an absurd fashion. The family and the Vance family had completely lost face. Let alone the Vance family, even the Moo family themselves wouldn't easily let Ethan off the hook. My father, fuming, pulled me along and hurled a statement at grandfather. Grandfather, if it weren't for the childhood betrothal my father arranged with your Moo family back then, our Vance family would never have agreed to marry our precious daughter to a mere illegitimate child. Since is so ungrateful, this marriage is off. As for the shame the Vance family suffered here today, I will get it back, sooner or later. With that, he took my mother and me, and stormed off in a rage. Back home, my mother was crying on the living room sofa, while my father looked utterly grim. After comforting my mother, I poured my father a cup of tea and sat beside him. My father took the tea, and affectionately stroked my head. Grace, don't worry, your father will definitely find you someone better than Ethan. Then you can inherit the family company, live the rest of your life without a care, and your mother and I can rest easy. I knew my father truly loved me, otherwise, he wouldn't have sacrificed his own life to protect me in my previous life. But like all traditional patriarchs, he believed a woman could only find happiness by marrying a good man. But he was wrong. Live a better life, one must first rely on oneself. Because in this world, I am the only one who will never betray myself. I clasped my father's hand that rested on my head, looked into his eyes, and said each word with utmost solemnity. Dad, I want to join the company and learn. I want to inherit the company myself in the future. My father was startled. He and my mother exchanged glances, then he began to hesitate. But you're a girl, I continued. But seeing you work so hard, I genuinely can't bear it. I'm almost graduating anyway, so why don't you let me come to the company and help share the burden, okay? I knew my father might not fully accept my idea yet, but I would take it slow. I would make my father see my worth. The next day, I started as a vice at a subsidiary of the Vance. My father arranged for Uncle, a trusted old subordinate of his, to mentor me. Uncle taught me diligently, and I, in turn, devoted almost all my time to work, with no mind for anything else. During this period, Ethan tried to see me a few times, but I refused to meet him. We had no relationship anymore. Until 2 months after the farce of the engagement party. That day, I had just finished dinner with a client. I had drunk quite a bit and was feeling tipsy as my driver helped me into the car. Just as the car door was about to close, a hand stopped it. The hand was distinctly jointed, with long, slender fingers, beautiful, yet undeniably strong. I leaned lazily against the seat, my hazy, slightly drunken gaze following the hand upwards until it met an unexpected man. The man was wearing a perfectly fitted custom-tailored suit, his distinctively jointed hand resting on the car's roof. The chain of his gold-rimmed glasses dangled as he leaned slightly, a polite smile on his face. Grace, long time no see. His familiar low chuckle sounded in my ear, sending a shiver through me. Marcus, the eldest young master of the Moo family. He was the man I had feared since childhood. He spoke everyone with gentle politeness, yet his gaze was always deep and dark, like a wolf that had fixated on its prey, ready to devour it at any moment, restrained, yet ruthless. When we were growing up, he controlled my movements as if staking a claim, forbidding me from playing with anyone else, male or female. He would always hold me, kiss my earlobe, and whisper like a devil in my ear. Grace, you are going to marry me one day. You only need to look at me. Then, Ethan appeared. He was bright and clean, with a hint of cautiousness, respecting me and needing me in return. Without hesitation, I chose Ethan from among my various suitors. And on that very day, Marcus disappeared. Rumor had it he had committed some transgression and grandfather had sent him to the military for discipline. Meeting him again years later, the suffocating awkwardness I felt facing Marcus back then was still just as vivid. Half my drunkenness instantly vanished, and I instinctively recoiled. "Why are you back?" To my surprise, Marcus simply sat down in the car as if it were his right, and instructed my driver, "Take us to the room." I was instantly furious. "Marcus, what are you doing? I have no ties to your Moo family anymore. Can you two brothers please stop bothering me for no reason?" Marcus turned his head. The flickering streetlights outside the car window cast their glow upon his impossibly handsome face. His smiling phoenix eyes were hidden behind his glasses, making his true emotions unreadable. "Don't take out your frustrations on me, especially not for wrongs done by others." I glared at him, then without another word, pulled out my cell phone, ready to dial 911. The second before the emergency call connected, Marcus grabbed my wrist and snatched my cell phone away. I looked up, instinctively reaching to take it back. "Give it back," Marcus explained with a hint of exasperation. "Your dad asked me to pick you up." "Relax, even if I wanted to kidnap you, I wouldn't do it right in front of your driver." I followed Marcus to the room. As soon as I pushed open the door, I saw Ethan kneeling there, bare-chested. His back was covered in crisscrossing wounds, flesh torn open and bleeding profusely. Tiffany's pregnancy was already showing. She wore maternity wear and knelt pitifully beside Ethan, crying like a wilted white water lily, battered by rain and wind. "Grandfather, it's all my fault. If you must punish someone, punish me. Don't hit Ethan anymore. He was already frail when he was in the orphanage, he can't take it." Ethan tenderly held Tiffany's hand, defiantly telling grandfather, "Grandfather, even if you beat me to death, I will never marry Grace. Tiffany is the one I love, and she's pregnant with my child." He was certainly resolute in front of grandfather, but then why had he been so insistent on seeing me earlier? Feeling a surge of annoyance, I was about to step forward when Marcus suddenly pulled me back. "Just stand back and watch." I pouted in displeasure. He truly was as domineering as ever. Grandfather watched the pair of star-crossed lovers clinging to each other for a long while with a cold gaze before finally speaking to Ethan, his face grim. "Ethan, you can be with Tiffany." Excitement bloomed in both Ethan's and Tiffany's eyes simultaneously. But William's next words sent them both crashing back down to hell. "However, the Moo family will not allow a woman of her standing to enter our household. If you insist on marrying her, you must give up everything and leave the Moo family." Ethan froze. He seemed somewhat flustered, his gaze darting aimlessly before suddenly landing on me. He stared fixedly at me, his eyes filled with hope, as if expecting me to step forward and say something. But I didn't. I just stood there. And even if Ethan were to ultimately give up everything for wealth and status, I would still absolutely not marry him. Fortunately, Ethan eventually left with Tiffany. I knew him. He was probably still hoping that Tiffany had the baby, making it a fait accompli. The Moo family would be powerless to separate them, but clearly underestimated grandfather. I thought Marcus had brought me here simply to witness Ethan abandoning me. After all, he'd done things like that countless times throughout our childhood. He was always eager to show me the ugliness of human nature, then gently, with a smile, tell me, "Grace, everyone in this world will abandon you, except for me." I didn't think he was a good person, I only found him terrifying. It wasn't until grandfather gently proposed forming a new marriage alliance that I realized Marcus's true objective was the latter. Grandfather looked at my silence and smiled gently. "I'd mentioned this to your father privately, but he said he wanted to ask for your opinion." He sighed. "Actually, the childhood betrothal your grandfather and I discussed back then only referred to a grandson of the Moo family, without specifying which one. Initially, everyone assumed you and Marcus would be a couple." I understood grandfather's meaning. Deep down, he still hoped for a strategic marriage alliance between our two families, as such a union was the most effective way to solidify our relationship. And as the only daughter of the Vance family, all of the Vance family's future assets would eventually be mine. No matter what, the man who married me would never lose out. Such a good deal, rather than benefiting another family, it might as well go to the Moo family. I smiled, but refused. "Grandfather, after what just happened, I'm not ready to discuss matters of marriage right now." After I finished speaking, my peripheral vision instinctively flickered to Marcus, who was standing there. Marcus still wore a smile on his face. He didn't seem angry about my second refusal, Instead, he watched me with amused interest. That look was like someone watching prey desperately trying to escape, yet ultimately bound to return to its cage. Indeed, grandfather, with a BEA. Ming's smile tried to persuade me. I'm not forcing you to marry right now, just get engaged first. You can slowly recover from your heartbreak, and Marcus is willing to wait for you. What's more, you and Marcus grew up together. Grandfather isn't just playing matchmaker for no reason, you two have so many years of shared history, don't you? Grandfather appeared gentle and amiable on the surface, but he was not an easy man to sway. Within the entire Mu family, he was incredibly autocratic, no one dared to defy his will. Seeing that grandfather seemed determined to achieve his goal today, I chose to propose a compromise I had already thought of. Grandfather, I believe the alliance between our two families doesn't necessarily have to be limited to a strategic marriage. Sometimes, marriage doesn't bring unity, more often, it brings conflict and division. Actually, my father, like you, hopes the Vance family and the Mu family will always remain harmonious and supportive of each other. So, I would like to acknowledge you as my adopted grandfather, and uncle as my adopted father. Would you be willing to accept me as your adopted granddaughter? I promise to show you respect and care. At my words, the smile on Marcus's face faded. We both knew that grandfather would definitely agree to my proposal. An adopted kinship is also a form of family tie, and often, familial affection is stronger than marriage. And so, the matter was settled. On the way back, Marcus drove me home again. Only this time, he was grim-faced the entire journey, his whole being shrouded in deep shadow, exuding a chilling, dark aura. But I was no longer afraid of him. When I got out of the car, I even smiled and waved back at him. Thanks for the ride home, big brother. Perhaps the address provoked Marcus, as he suddenly seized my wrist, his eyes bloodshot, staring at me and questioning me through gritted teeth, word by word. Grace, do you really dislike me that much? I instinctively felt that he was about to lose his mind. I took a deep breath, forcefully pulled my hand from Marcus's grasp, and met his gaze calmly. Marcus, I don't dislike you. I never have. I've always remembered your kindness to me. A flicker of hope crossed his eyes. I then continued. But I don't like your attitude towards me. I am not your possession, nor your toy. You have no right to control what I do or who I befriend. I won't be with a man who doesn't respect me. For the first time, Marcus showed such an anxious and bewildered expression. He tried hard to explain. But I cut him off. I know those people approached me because I'm the daughter of the Vance family, but even if they might deceive or hurt me, that's my business. Marcus, can you honestly say you never had any ill intentions towards me? Marcus spoke to me, almost swearing vehemently. I didn't. I never thought of hurting you. I told him with a cold laugh. No, Marcus, you did. You tried to raise me like a hothouse flower, unable to endure any setbacks, incapable of facing the slightest storm. That way, I would never be able to leave your protection, and you could keep me firmly under your control. That was your greatest malice. Marcus froze on the spot, as if he had been profoundly shocked. I didn't acknowledge him further, turning to walk into my house. My father, as expected, was waiting for me at home. As soon as he saw me, he anxiously asked about the day's events. I first poured myself a glass of water and gulped it down. I had to admit, even with the courage to confront Marcus, I was still nervous for my first time. Composing myself, I gave my father an exasperated look and said, somewhat angrily, Dad, why did you privately arrange my marriage to Marcus with grandfather without my consent? Seeing that I was angry, my father immediately softened his tone. But it wasn't completely settled, was it? I hummed an acknowledgement, then stated directly. I've acknowledged grandfather as my adopted grandfather, and uncle is now my adopted father. Marcus and I are now siblings, so it's impossible for us to be anything more. My father's mouth fell open in shock. However, he didn't blame me for acting on my own. Instead, he felt that my approach would actually strengthen the ties between the two families even more. But when it came to marriage, my father ultimately couldn't let it go. He said to me earnestly, Grace, your mother and I are getting older. We can't be with you forever, and we certainly can't stay in this position forever. Wouldn't it be good to have someone to take care of you after you marry, and someone to take over the company? My heart felt a little bitter, and I asked my father, feeling wronged. Dad, have I not been performing well under Uncle's guidance these past months? Why would you rather leave the family business to a future son-in-law whose background you don't even know, instead of entrusting it to your own daughter? Is it just because I'm a woman? My father looked at my tears, at a loss for words. He dampened a towel, and while wiping my face, he clumsily tried to soothe me. That's not what Dad meant at all. Your talent and hard work have truly surprised me recently. Dad has even discussed it with Uncle, and next month, you'll be joining corporate to manage a division. Then, he brought up the topic of descendants. But if you don't marry and don't have children, what will you do when you're old? I promised my father that regardless of whether I found someone I wanted to marry in the future, I would have children. Children who belonged solely to the Vance family. My father finally gave up the idea of pressuring me into marriage. The banquet celebrating the adopted kinship between the Vance and Moo families was a grand affair. The guests who had attended my engagement party 3 months prior now attended this adoption ceremony. Those who had been eagerly watching for a fallout between the Vance and Moo families, hoping to profit from it, were naturally stunned. They never imagined the two families had such a maneuver up their sleeves. At the adoption ceremony, I wore an opulent champagne-colored gown, and Marcus stood beside me, supporting me. I didn't know what he had been through during this time, but upon seeing him again, he genuinely acted like a good older brother. That was enough. I walked over to grandfather and uncle, who were seated at the head table, and served them tea respectively. Grandfather smiled very kindly, pulled out a generous cash gift in an envelope, and also gave me a superb imperial jade pendant, which Marcus had reportedly specially acquired from an auction a while ago, worth tens of millions. I smiled sweetly and accepted everything. Thank you, grandfather. However, when I was serving tea to uncle, although he accepted it, he still glanced at Marcus, sighed, and murmured softly, I still hoped you'd become our daughter-in-law. I pretended not to understand uncle's regret and accepted the generous cash gift, in an envelope, he offered. Adopted father, you will definitely have a daughter-in-law in the future. Then, both your daughter and your daughter-in-law will show you respect and care. Uncle heard this, chuckled, and seemed to let go of his disappointment. What I hadn't expected was that Marcus had also prepared a gift for me. It was a tiara, with alternating crosses and fleur-de-lis, adorned with over 200 gemstones. The main diamond at the very top was a 240-plus carat South Pink diamond, with a total value exceeding 40 million. Marcus said, I had this tiara commissioned a long time ago. The American pink diamond on it was something I personally acquired at a diamond auction in South. He gave a wry smile. I truly thought you would marry me back then. I imagined how dazzling you would look wearing it with your wedding dress. Now, consider this my apology. I accepted it. As I said, I didn't dislike Marcus. No matter what he did to me, as long as it stemmed from love, I could forgive it. He held me tightly and whispered in my ear, Grace, whether you end up as my wife or my sister, I will protect you for life. For the first time I hugged him back and said, I hope you meet a woman you truly love in the future, and who truly loves you back. Marcus pushed me away, shook his head regretfully, and said with certainty, there will never be another. We were interrupted by the sound of an argument coming from outside the banquet hall. Marcus and I walked over and saw staff members blocking Ethan, preventing him from entering. After just over a month apart, Ethan looked considerably gaunt and disheveled. After he had disassociated from the Moo family, grandfather had simply announced publicly that, following DNA testing, Ethan was not a descendant of the Moo family at all, and from then on, he would have no further ties to them. This move was truly ruthless, directly cutting off all of Ethan's escape routes. Since he was no longer a grandson of the Moo family, those who had hoped to latch on to the Moo family through him naturally stopped helping. Once his fair-weather friends scattered, Ethan was left with no one. Penniless, he and Tiffany had to rely solely on themselves just to barely scrape by. The aura of a young master from a prominent family was gone. He was nothing more than an ordinary person toiling for survival. Perhaps, he was even less than ordinary. If a person had never witnessed the glamour and extravagance of high society, they might not harbor grand illusions. But the sudden fall from grace and the resulting class disparity were unbearable for someone with Ethan's immense pride. What's more, Tiffany's pregnancy was far along, making it impossible for her to work, and he didn't even have money to support her or their baby. Ethan began to entertain thoughts of returning to the Moo family and begging grandfather for mercy. He couldn't get into the Moo family's main residence, but he'd heard that the Moo family was holding a banquet here today, so he decided to try his luck, but clearly hadn't expected to run into me here. He looked at my opulent champagne-colored gown, the tiara on my head, then at Marcus standing beside me. Something sparked in his mind, and with bloodshot eyes, he roared at me. Grace, you and Marcus got engaged, didn't you? It's only been a little over 3 months since we broke up, and you're already so eager to be with another man. You're a Beside me, Marcus's knuckles cracked loudly. But I didn't give him the chance. I strode forward and slapped Ethan hard twice. What right do you have to question me? Do you and I have any connection anymore? If you bark at me again, I'll have someone break your legs. I had used considerable force, my palm stung, and Ethan's face immediately swelled up, with clear imprints of my 5 fingers. I had wanted to slap him twice for a long time. Ethan tried to cause more trouble, but Marcus ordered his men to throw him out. You are no longer a descendant of the Mu family, Ethan. Some decisions, once made, leave no room for regret. The dinner ended, and Marcus drove me home. On the way, we passed a dark alley. The car suddenly stopped, its headlights illuminating the alley. Inside the alley, Ethan was held by 2 bodyguards, his face and body covered in injuries. He knelt there, bowing 3 times, touching his head to the ground in the direction of the car. I said to Marcus beside me, "You don't need to do this, I've already taught him a lesson myself." Marcus, however, shook his head. "That was your turn, mine hasn't come yet. No one in this world is allowed to hurt you, not even me." I couldn't control what he wanted to do, so I could only sigh helplessly. After that, I was constantly busy, pursuing an MBA while continuing to learn all aspects of the company's business. I felt like a top that just couldn't stop spinning. Marcus would always come to see me, sometimes inviting me to dinner, other times bringing small gifts, reminding me to rest well and not to overwork myself. Since we became siblings, our relationship had actually improved quite a bit compared to before. I have to admit, he really was a good older brother. During this time, Ethan also tried to find me a few times, but he was always stopped by security outside the company gates. Once, he rushed in front of my car and blocked me, scaring me so much that I nearly stomped on the accelerator pedal and ran him over. Unfortunately, I didn't. Ethan only suffered a broken rib from the impact, falling to the ground and writhing in pain, groaning loudly. I sat in the car, contemplating for a while. Was this guy so desperate that he was trying to stage an accident to extort money from me? However, after much hesitation, I still opened the door, got out, and drove him to the hospital. It wasn't because I was kind, nor because I valued our years of shared history. It was simply because our company was currently bidding for a major government project, and I also wanted to join the city council. Causing a hit-and-run incident at a time like this would significantly hinder both the company's and my personal plans for the latter half of the year. My plans for joining the board of directors would also likely be postponed. It simply wasn't worth it for such an insignificant person. Besides taking Ethan to the hospital, I also had my assistant retrieve the surveillance footage from the underground parking garage to confirm that Ethan had deliberately run into my car, and I had her file a report with the traffic police department. I truly wanted no more complicated entanglement with Ethan. In the hospital, Ethan lay on the hospital bed, clutching my hand tightly and weeping as he spoke to me. "Grace, I know I was wrong. I regret everything. I shouldn't have treated you that way. It's all Tiffany, that woman. She's a liar." Ethan gritted his teeth whenever he mentioned Tiffany. "Tiffany isn't even carrying my child. That woman only wanted my money. She ruined me and then ran off with some rich guy. That bitch. She's the one who brought me to this." I watched Ethan, who was weeping piteously at me, with cold eyes. Seeing his distorted face, I felt not an ounce of pity, only revulsion. I didn't speak or struggle. Ethan probably thought I was pitying him, so he gripped my hand tighter and almost pleaded. "Grace, please, will you intercede with grandfather for me? I'm living terribly right now, and I want to return to the Mu family. I'll even marry you, I promise. From now on, I'll be completely devoted to you, without a single wavering thought. Grandfather listens to you most of all. Will you help me talk to him, please?" At this point, what dreams was this man still chasing? Not only was Marcus now the head of the Mu family, but even if grandfather were still in charge, he would absolutely never agree. He still wanted to marry me? Did he think I was some lowly person? How ridiculous. I forcefully shook off Ethan's grip on my hand and said coldly, "What does this have to do with me? The traffic police will be here shortly to handle this matter. My lawyer and assistant will contact you regarding all damage assessment and compensation issues." With that, I turned and walked away. Just as I was about to step out the door, Ethan's heartbroken cry echoed from behind me. "Grace, we had so many years together. Are you really going to be so ruthless and heartless towards me?" Those were the very words I had wanted to ask him in my previous life, when Ethan sold me to a lawless border region, when I was tormented and defiled by those people, when I had my organs harvested. I walked out of the hospital without looking back. After that, I never saw Ethan again. I heard that Marcus personally taught him a lesson, warning him never to bother me again. What happened that day in the underground parking garage was far too dangerous. Marcus worried Ethan might do something to bring down everyone. Why? Him. But I knew Ethan wouldn't do it, he simply wouldn't dare. Days passed steadily, and I remained engrossed in my work. The group successfully secured the multi-billion-dollar government construction project, and I successively joined the city council and board of directors. My father grew increasingly satisfied with me. At first, he would still bring up the matter of blind dates for me, but gradually, he stopped mentioning it. 4 years quickly passed. During those 4 years, I would still occasionally hear scattered news about Ethan from mutual friends we'd had in the past. For instance, Ethan eventually got back together with Tiffany, because Tiffany had been dumped by that wealthy businessman. Tiffany went back to Ethan, they had a one-night stand, and Tiffany got pregnant again. Or, for example, Ethan wanted to find his old buddies to start a company with him, but he was tricked into drinking over 20 bottles of whiskey and almost died from it. However, those awful trust fund kids were just stringing him along. Without my and the Moo family's protection, he couldn't even get a foothold with those people. Another instance was Ethan bouncing between several companies because he loved to boss people around and lecture them, acting more arrogant than the boss himself, and was eventually fired. Gradually, those people saw that I truly had no interest in Ethan, so they stopped mentioning him altogether. The next time I saw Ethan was when I was involved in an urban renewal project. The project manager and I, along with a team, were walking through the dark, damp, narrow alleyways of Old when we spotted a tenant couple arguing from a distance. The man was wearing a tank top and shorts, shuffling in a pair of flip-flops. His face was unshaven, and his belly was round. He looked exactly like a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. The woman next to him had gained weight, her face looked aged, and her hair was thinning and greasy. She was holding a several month old baby in her arms, and her belly was prominently swollen. The woman cried, smacking the man's back with the sole of her flip-flop. I, Tiffany, was at least a campus beauty queen. So many rich men chased me back then. How could I have fallen for a useless guy like you, who doesn't make money and loves to drink and gamble? What terrible karma did I create? It's all your fault, you've ruined my entire life. You worthless individual, sleep outside tonight. Just looking at you annoys me. How much money do you give me each month? My life is so miserable. The man said nothing. He simply hunched his back, bending slightly at the waist, instinctively adopting a defensive posture. I watched for a long time before suddenly realizing that the man who had gained so much weight was actually the vibrant, spirited Ethan from years ago. Ethan seemed to sense my gaze. He suddenly looked up, and the moment he saw me, he froze, his eyes filled with an incredibly complex expression. In those brief seconds, I had no idea what he was thinking. I simply walked past him as if he were a stranger. Just then, Ethan suddenly grabbed Tiffany's hand, raised his hand, and brutally slapped her several times, cursing loudly. I couldn't make out what he was cursing about anymore. My ears were filled with the sounds of the man and woman fighting, and the baby's cries, blending into a noisy cacophony. I frowned and quickly left that trouble-ridden place. 6 months later, the urban renewal project I was working on concluded. Training in a foreign country, and coincidentally, the Vance family also wanted to expand into overseas markets, with their first chosen location being this foreign country. I, along with a team, boarded a plane bound for the foreign country. Sitting in my seat, I was just about to put on my eye mask and get some sleep when a tall shadow fell over me, and a familiar voice spoke in my ear. May I sit here? I looked up, meeting the sunlight streaming in through the window, and saw Marcus's smiling face. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your views, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.